and we are live on the Lice cast.
I don't think either of me or you have to worry about lice anytime soon, Shane.
No, there's no lice on this cast.
But maybe our guests will.
Fluff the intro ever. So yeah, we are live on the Icecast Live. Next to me is my co-host Olly McManee. Good evening, Olly.
Hello.
Well, I hope lice free.
Above the neckline, anyway.
I love your background. Very festive.
Yeah. Well, you've got to get in the spirit sometime, haven't you? So I thought, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
No, I can see that. But I thought because it's counting down to Christmas, we've only got a couple of episodes till the fatal day. I thought, why not go into this back room for a change where I can show off the lights? And I must say, the twinkliness has come off quite well.
It does. It looks very nice, mate. Very nice. So yeah, I'm very excited tonight, actually, because we've got what word can we use to describe our guest? There's no word that really does injustice. I don't think we could. You say legend, couldn't we? That would be appropriate.
Sensational, legend,
sensational,
amazing.
He's just done so much.
Yeah. Are we going to have enough time to get through it all, though?
Well, this is the challenge. I think we might have to pick and choose our favourite projects that our guest has worked on.
Do we just wind him up and let him go? And then we sit back.
Let him go. Yeah. Pick his favourites. The top 10.
Well, I've got a few choice questions, but I dare say these are questions that Jim's been asked countless times before, but I've never asked them before, so I'd be very interested to know what the answers are to some of those.
And I'm sure our listeners will also be interested in the answers to those questions.
Yeah.
Our guest tonight, of course, is Mr. Jim Shooter. Has been working professionally in comics since the age of 13, which is incredible. Which I'm going to have to ask him about that.
Yes, definitely.
Because that's incredible. I mean, that's like a prodigy, isn't it? To be working for DC, writing Superman at 13 years old, that is absolutely incredible. Was Marvel EIC from 1978 for over a decade, ushered in some of the most groundbreaking titles of that period. Just what an incredible record. So yeah, we're not going to waste any more time.
No,
we want as much time as we can to ask him about these things. So, and if you're in the chat, guys, if you're listening and you're watching in the chat, please do feel free to drop some comments, drop some questions. Jim has very kindly said he will talk about anything. So we're going to hold you to that, Jim. So we're going to play the intro, and it's not going to be as slick as it normally is because Sam the Imaginary Man is away. What excuse was it this time, Olly?
He was in Leeds, but I don't know if it's a Christmas do because he doesn't live in Leeds. But either way, he's drunk somewhere in Leeds, a beautiful city to visit.
Well, it is. I like Leeds. It's a good night out. So I'm the one playing the intro tonight. So if it doesn't go,
fingers crossed.
Me, yes.
Get on with it, shit.
And welcome back to the Icecast. Now, I should have brought Jim back on then, but unfortunately, I had a sound issue which I need to sort out very quickly, which might cause problems later on if I don't sort it out. So I have sorted it out. And now I will bring on our guest, Mr. Jim Shooter. Good evening, Jim.
How you doing?
We're very well, thank you. Well, I'm speaking for Olly. Olly, I'm assuming you are well.
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jim, on the Icecast.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And really appreciating your background there. Is that an original?
Yeah, that's Jack Kirby gave that to me. It's a long story. But, it's signed on the bottom to Jim, a good friend. I like that.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, you say it's a long story. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of stories that you'll be able to share with us tonight, and that's just one of many. And we were saying before in the intro that we have lots of questions that you've probably been asked lots of times before. My question is, what is the most commonly asked question that you get?
Oh, that's a good question.
Tell you, how did you get started? You know.
That's really? Yeah. Yeah. Any tips?
Yeah, start in 1966. That's the tip.
When the going was good.
Yeah, yeah. They had an opening. They had openings. I mean, because the American comics basically they started in a steep decline sometime in the early to middle 50s. The Comics Code, the Kefauver Commission, and all that stuff, that didn't help.
No.
And then there was pretty much, during the 50s, they didn't bring in new people. They didn't need any. There was, if you wanted somebody, there were lots of unemployed cartoonists walking around because the industry had contracted so much. So about 1965, enough guys had retired or gotten other work or died that they finally started needing somebody, and my stuff just happened to show up on the right day at the right time.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's a common story, actually, isn't it? Right place, right time. There's always an element of luck, isn't there?
Yeah.
When you start but obviously to be chosen to write for DC Comics, at the tender age of 13, there's a lot more than luck going on there, I would say, Jim.
I guess they thought I was good enough to make the cut, and worth training. I mean, I sent in one story and I got a letter back saying, "Oh, this is interesting. Why don't you send us another one?" So I sent them 2 more, and then I got a phone call, and the guy said, "We want to start using you as a regular writer." His name was Mort Weisinger, and we're going to start giving you assignments. Okay. So my first assignment was a 12-page Supergirl story. He's a Supergirl, 12 pages next Friday. I said, "Yes, sir." So there was, and they published everything I wrote for them. Everything was bought and published. Some of it wasn't great because I was a kid, but a few things, came out okay. And I had some great artists to work with. So, man, they make you look good.
Yeah, I mean, it's the storytelling, isn't it? I mean, you can get a writer who's learning their craft, but if you've got a master artist, story like nobody's business, they really do bring the best out of your script, don't they?
Well, I didn't even actually write scripts. I mean, I didn't know there was a script. I just tried to make what I sent in look as much like a comic book as I could. I designed a cover for it. I even colored the cover because I wanted them to know what I wanted it to look like.
Wow.
And I did layouts for every single panel of every single story and designed all the costumes and stuff like that, designed the covers. And the artists liked that. They liked it because I think a lot of times writers will ask for things you can't draw, like answer the phone while you're lighting your pipe kind of stuff. and so the artists liked it, and they would follow the kids' layouts and they improve them. Okay. And then if I made some stupid mistake, they'd tell me. They helped the kid. They wanted me to, they enjoyed what I was doing and they wanted me to get better at it. So I had a lot of great trainers. I had a lot of people. Mort Weisinger, first of all, who, for whatever you think of him, I mean, he was not a nice guy, but it was stuff. And he taught me a lot. And I also, when I was talking to a Wally Wood or a Kurt Swan or whoever, I listened to every word they said. Gil Kane said something, I wrote it down.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had some great help. That was terrific. I got through it.
And the important part as well when you're at that stage in your career is being receptive to criticism, isn't it? Because some people are very precious about their work. They can't take criticism. And it's just so important to be able to take that on board and do something with it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in those days, I worked with all these old guys. I was 13 and they're 40, 50, whatever. And from them, I got total respect. They helped me. They taught me. They couldn't have been nicer to me. In later years, you're working with young guys and they're saying, well, who are you to tell me anything? Well, A, I'm the editor in chief, and B, I've been doing this for 40 or 57 years now, So, it's I don't know where all that attitude came in, but the old time Grandmaster Hall of Famers They were professional. They did the job, and they were nice about it.
Did you find, Jim, that maybe you started off as very starstruck? I mean, you mentioned giants of yesteryear like Kurt Swan and Wally Wood. Were you starstruck to begin with, and maybe because of the respect they showed you, that soon faded away very quickly? I imagine you have to get over that to get on with comics at a professional level.
I never lost respect for them. Actually, I didn't know who most of these guys were because DC Comics in those days didn't put credits on the books.
Right.
I knew some of them because I'd seen their work at Marvel, so I knew who Wally Wood was. But I didn't even know their names, most of them, and I was introduced to them. I knew their work. I said, "Oh, he's the guy that I like. He's that really great guy,"
Yeah, you recognize the style straight away.
Yeah, and I never lost respect for them. I always thought that I got really lucky. I got to work with so many great people.
And talking about credits and stuff, you were obviously a pioneer in the area of royalties for artists and writers, and that must have been
rises.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you number one, that was probably hard work to get that into place, and number two, you must have ruffled a lot of feathers to get that to happen. Was it a real battle to bring in those rights for artists and writers?
Well, when I started at Marvel, the whole industry was in very steep decline. And Marvel was like the healthiest patient in the terminal ward. We were on our way out. So when I was hired by the president of the company, I reported to the president of the company. Nobody could overrule me but him.
Yeah.
And when we're having my final talk with him when he hired me. He said, "Your job is to preside over the death of Marvel Comics." He says, "We're getting out of this business." He says, "We're going to get into children's books and we're going to get into animation. And your job is to not lose too much money until we do."
Wow.
And I said, "You're so wrong." I said, "This can be big and we can make it big, but we're a long way from there. But we can start." And I told him some things I wanted to do. I want to start paying royalties. I want to start, improving the situation for creators. And basically, when I said it was going to be big, he said, "Oh, baloney, it can't be big. This is the crappy little kids thing. Who cares?" And I told him, I said, "You're wrong, and we can make this big." And he said, "Do anything you want. Just try not to lose money." Well, do anything you want is a pretty free hand.
It is, yeah.
And so I did anything I wanted, and I never got much resistance. Like I said, only the president could overrule me, and he never opened a comic book in his life. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't read comics, but he could read financial statements.
Yeah.
And so when we turned it around and started doing well, that was fine with him. He never, one time somebody, Gene Colan, called him up. He calls me, the president of the company, says, "Who's Gene Colan?" And I said, "Oh, he's an artist." He says, "Oh," I said, "Well, tell him to stop calling me." And another time, John Byrne called him, and John had some issue, and John called the president of the company, right? And Galton calls me, and he says, "Who's John Byrne?" So I mean, he was not involved. He wasn't really in tune there. So anyway, to some stuff, I got away with it because I decided to do it, and I had a free hand. The royalty thing was a little more difficult because I had a royalty plan approved the day I was hired.
Wow.
Okay. So then I'm sitting down with the vice president of finance, trying to work out how it's going to work. Right. And he complicated it up. I mean, he kept trying. He said, "Well, why should we reward people just because they happen to be on Spider-Man? Well, let's make it for an increase in sales." I'm no, Barry, no. It's just it'll sort itself out.
Yeah.
The good guys will gravitate to the big books. And anyway, so finally, and the DC announces they're going to do a royalty plan. And I said, "That's it. It's do or die. We do it now."
Yeah.
And so the trouble was that we did an analysis, and if we matched DC's plan, my plan was going to be better. But if we just matched DC's plan, it was going to take $750,000 off the bottom line in the first year.
Wow.
Unless sales went up.
Yeah.
And so Galton said, "We better talk to the board." And so we went over to West Caldwell, New Jersey. Me and Stan and Galton. Stan came with me. He wasn't involved in the comics. He was doing all the cartoon stuff and all that.
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. But I said, "Come with me, help me."
Yeah.
And so he did. And so I'd made the arguments, and he kept saying, "He's right. He's right."
He carries a lot of weight. I mean, he must have carried a lot of weight, Stan. You know.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was Stan Lee, but I mean, he wasn't. He wasn't prepared for the argument. I was prepared for the argument, and so I convinced them that sales would go up, and I convinced them that if we don't do this, we're dead. Yeah. And because DC does it and we don't, we're dead. We're dead. So I got it approved, and then Barry Kaplan stepped up to the plate after being an obstacle for so long, and he says, "Let's beat them." He said, "Let's do a sliding scale. They have 4% royalty pool. We're going to start with 6, and we're going to as the sales increase, it goes up to 10."
Great,
said, great. That's more like what I wanted in the first place. Yeah. And so we did that, and P.S. we didn't take it didn't cost us $750,000. It cost us over $2 million the first year, but that meant that sales went up so high that Marvel was thrilled to fork out that $2 million because that you should have seen what they were making. But at any rate, so that was one battle, but most of it I was able to do pretty easily. And not, I mean, they, as soon as comics were dying, everybody was dying. In my first year, Charlton went out of business. Warren went out of business. Harvey stopped publishing. Archie went all reprint. Yeah. One day, DC Comics canceled over 40% of their titles. You should have seen the line of comic book creators at my door the next day.
Oh, I bet.
I some editors were fired and stuff like that. So I was able to get guys like Larry Hama, Al Milgram, and Louise Simonson. Oh my God, that's winning the lottery, And so we got the good people. We started turning it around. I started introducing programs. Guess what? The word spread. You can make money at Marvel. I doubled the rates. I doubled them again. I kept increasing them. And every time I could save money or beat my projections, I used that money to pay people better, to do programs. We had life insurance for a freelancer. Do 3 jobs a year.
Wow. That's different, isn't it? I mean, that is really revolutionary.
Get health insurance. Yeah. And so, we had a great situation. The royalties was kind of the capper there. We bought everybody's materials. I said, wait, it's work for hire. You can't just give them the paper and say, oh yeah, we own this. You can't. It's like asking the workers to bring the leather to the shoe factory and then claiming that you own the shoes. It just doesn't work. So, and the lawyers backed me up on that. And so we started providing pens, pencils, erasers, ink, Winsor Newton brushes, which cost you a fortune.
Yeah.
And everything, and I said, if you send something to Marvel, I'll pay the postage. If you call Marvel, I'll pay. In those days, you paid per call. I'll pay your phone bill. If I ask you to come to Marvel, we'll pay your transportation. We'll put you up in a nice place. We'll feed you, and like I said, word spread. Hey, things are pretty good at Marvel. I mean, they didn't know about that shooter character. Wasn't he at DC? I mean, who knows what he's up to? But you get Archie Goodwin and Larry Hama and Louise Simonson and Denny O'Neil. People say, how bad can it be? If Louise is there, how bad could it be?
Yeah.
All these people start showing up, even the ones who didn't know me or were afraid of me for some reason. I mean, I just conducted the orchestra.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned a lot of great creators there. The one name that hasn't cropped up yet, and I think in the week where there was such bad news about George Perez, I'd love to know your thoughts on him, only because I saw a tweet from Mitch Gerard saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's not often we get to say to the person whilst he's still with us, what a great guy he is. And obviously he was working at Marvel under your tenure. What are your memories of him working? And do you still keep in contact with him? Have you kept in contact with him, Jim?
We see each other. We used to see each other every once in a while at conventions. He doesn't do very many anymore. No. I haven't been calling him every week or anything.
No.
He when he was at Marvel, he worked with me on the Avengers first, and some other things, but the Avengers. And we became very good friends. I was at his house for parties and, over there hanging out sometimes. My house was way out in Queens, so he never came there. but at any rate, we got along really well. And it was just great working with him because, he'd give you everything you asked for and then put in things besides that were good, and just terrific, and poured his heart in this. He worked so hard. The amount of work in those things. Anyway, so then finally, after a couple of years, DC Comics, we were taken off. Well, they're trying to fight back. They wanted they wanted to do stuff too, and they did. They did Watchmen. They did, eventually the Dark Knight and stuff like that. Well, one of the things they did is that Marv Wolfman had gone there and he wanted to get George Perez. And so I got this, George told me, but he also wrote me a 3-page letter of apology.
Oh, bless him.
He was sorry he was going to take this offer from DC, and he was only doing it because they offered him the Justice League, and drawing the Justice League was his childhood dream.
Yeah.
How do you argue with
it? Yeah.
Follow your heart, go.
Yeah.
And so he went there, and it as it worked out, he didn't end up doing the Justice League, or not much of it anday.
No,
he ended up with Marv on Titans, which was created by Bob Haney some years earlier, and they brought it back, and that was a hit. So that all worked out pretty well for George, and I was happy for him. I mean, when we one time I had a bunch of the editors sitting around, we're trying to figure out who don't we have. Who is it that we want that we don't have or don't have access to? And we came up with 2 names: Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and George Perez. And okay, fine. We'll live, but we miss those guys. Anyway,
I bet. But DC have got to have some good guys.
Hey, you had John Byrne. You had John Byrne, and for a lot of people mine and Shane's age, for me, just like Perez was my gateway drug into comics, John Byrne was my gateway drug into Marvel. For some reason, it was very difficult to get Marvel in the UK. Now, at one point in the mid-'80s, when you would have still been sort of top dog, that happened. I don't know if that's anything that came about because of your leadership.
Well, maybe I contribute a little bit. We had a British department doing sort of crummy versions of our books, and that was not a good idea. I
remember that. Do you mean the reprint stuff, or the?
And then they also did Captain Britain, and But they'd go through and put U's in all the words like honor and color and stuff. And,
the right way of spelling, Jim. That's
but that was their whole. It was a waste of time, and so I don't know exactly what started it, but the idea of having our own office there, our own publishing office there, came up, and that was fine with me. By that time, I think it was Titan was distributing in England, so the direct market had opened it up for the American books, and if they wanted to publish stuff that was custom made, that seemed reasonable. Okay. And they used to send me over there. Galton would send me over there, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times a year to train the staff, because most of the guys there were new.
Yeah.
And so I'd go over there and teach them creative and production and printing and all that stuff. And some of those people turned out to be great, like Allison.
Oh yeah,
who worked at DC doing their printing production, and Barry Kitson, I think, was there or was working for them at that time. Anyway, there were some great guys, and they always were glad that when I came over, because I had an expense account. We could all go to the pub.
That sounds so you were everybody's friend.
Yeah.
I know a lot of those guys, and that sounds spot on.
And I do remember you turn up every time you were in Britain. You turn up on the most bizarre children's programs, because obviously I'd remember seeing you, and I'm 6'4", but on these programs you seem to be a giant compared to all the small people we had on
the Wide Awake
television.
Club was one.
That was it.
I remember that.
We're Wide Awake.
Little Timmy Mallet.
I mean, that studio, I had to be there, I think, at 5 in the morning or earlier.
Yeah,
and the thing is, it was a long ride. It was way more than an hour, maybe 2-hour ride from my hotel in London. So imagine what time I had to get up to be on this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. It was fun. I had a good old time. It was great.
I bet they had to use like a wide angle lens, you know, to get you all in the shot.
They usually make me sit down as they were there.
It's funny you're talking about the British guys. A good friend of mine worked with you for a little while in the States when you were at Defiant. Charlie Adlard. He said I spoke to him last night, and he said, "Ask Jim if he remembers me."
Oh, of course I do. Yes. Yeah, I remember everybody. I just can't always, put 2 and 2 together sometimes. And well, why? Look, I'm 70 years old. Give me a break. I'm still the kid, to a few people like Neil.
Yeah.
Neil, Roy,
Yeah, Roy. He's 81.
John Ramirez Senior.
Yeah.
I'm the kid.
It's funny, isn't it? You're always the kid to one generation, aren't you? As long as they're still around, Yeah. But yeah, anyway, I fast forwarded a little bit there.
You did fast forward. I don't think we finished with the stories of Marvel yet. Because a great way to summarize that up is just to ask you, you've mentioned quite a lot of milestones, but what would you like to be remembered for in what could be described as, to some, a divisive career?
I think the best thing I did was making things better for creators. I mean, I don't know how it is now, but we really turned that around. Guys were making pathetic money, and they just get their page rate. That's all they got. No rights, no benefits, no nothing. And we changed that, and we made it very good. And some of those guys became millionaires. Some of those, everybody was doing well. But some of them, like Claremont, Byrne, those guys were making fortunes.
Oh, yeah.
And, Walt on Thor was doing great. And the Avengers guys were doing great. And Roger Stern everybody's doing good.
And that's a healthy industry, isn't it? I mean, what you did was really pave the way for what we have now on the creator-owned side of things, because it made creators realize that they had a stake in their work. And it's gone full circle now, obviously, when you've got...
Yeah, we also started the whole Epic line.
Of course.
There was a lot of experimentation under you, wasn't there?
Well, part of that was the origin of Epic was that Stan was still at Marvel. His office was is at Marvel, but he was working with the West Coast always. He didn't have any responsibility. He wasn't even on the organizational chart. He had nothing to do with the comics, except he's Stan Lee, and if he says something, you listen. So one time the people from Metal Hurlant came up for an appointment, and of course they asked for Stan because they think he's running the comics. Okay, so Stan calls me in, and we're talking to these people, and they wanted us to be the American licensee for Metal Hurlant.
Right.
And Stan was looking at this stuff. Well, I was familiar with it, but he was looking at this stuff, and he said, it's all violence and sex. There's not much story here. I don't know, And I said, well, I agree. I said, I think we're probably not going to get away with just, second violence. So anyway, when I became editor-in-chief, I started working on creating a magazine like that, only story-oriented, not great art, great creators, creator-owned, but more focused on story. Hired one guy, he didn't work out. So then I was talking to Stan. I said, I got to get somebody, and he says, well, who could we get? And I said, well, the best guy in the world is Archie Goodwin, but I used to be his assistant. I don't know if he wants to come back and work for me. He's a contract writer now. And so anyway, we figured out a way to talk him into it. And basically, what Archie hated about being an editor or being the boss, he was the editor-in-chief for 19 months, I think. What he hated about it was his eyes would glaze over whenever he had to deal with lawyers, accountants, any kind of bean counters. I mean, he couldn't stand that. He didn't speak their language. He didn't want to, and it just it was really difficult dealing with those people. So my deal with him is I'll pave the road. I'll do all that, because I'm doing it for the comics anyway.
Yeah.
And all you do is the books, and you tell me what you want. I'll try to get it for you. And I worked out really well. I mean, he did some brilliant stuff. I mean, I really felt that might have had some influence on the indie market, the creator-owned things. I might have.
Definitely. I definitely think so, Jim, because I mean, I know obviously a lot of people who work now in sort of independent and creator-owned comics, and so many people cite Epic Illustrated as an influence.
Yeah, well, I mean, Archie did such a great job on it. Yeah, I'll tell you one way we did influence that market for sure was when I took office, the direct market was just starting out. I started getting the print order, copied on the print orders. I'm now the boss, I'm editor-in-chief. And so I noticed there's this category called Seagate, and it's at the bottom of the print order every time, and it's like 200 copies, 100 copies, not pretty much nothing. I thought, well, I know with the military and the Whitman copies and the newsstand and subscription, I know all that stuff. What's this? So I asked the circulation director. He closes the door and he says, oh, look, it's just a little, I'm selling comics to a friend out the back door. He has a little shop and he distributes to other little shops. And it's just to get some extra volume. It's cost plus. It's nothing. I said, oh, I started keeping track of it. And those numbers went up every month, I'm like, whoa. Yeah. And also the books we liked did better than the other books. One book is selling 500, X-Men is selling 1,100.
Interesting.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So anyway, then this guy Chuck Rosansky comes into my office, and he didn't want to see me. He wanted to see the president. President didn't have any interest in talking to a comic book person. So Chuck said, "Are you aware of what we call the direct market?" And I said, "Well, funny you should mention that. I bring out all my little charts and stuff kept keeping track of the sales." Anyway, Chuck he said, look, everybody loves Phil, but he's a bottleneck. It's illegal. You can't just give one guy an exclusive, there's all these problems. He had an 11-point plan to fix the direct market. But he couldn't get in to see Galton. I said, you got to talk to Galton. I said, I'll get you in. And so I called him and I said, you have to talk to this guy. And so we went upstairs. And by the time that meeting was over, we had enacted 10 of his 11 points. And then, it's a complicated story. There was a lawsuit. There was all kinds of going on, and lots of people contributed. The capital cities guys, everybody played a role. But all of a sudden, we publish our trade terms. Anybody who can meet the minimums, and before you know it, we have 18 distributors. And guess what? Phil did better because the market grew. Okay, Phil didn't lose anything, and so all right. Now I'm getting to the contribution we made. We're doing better books. The direct shops, there's more and more of them, and they're doing well because we've got something good to sell. DC says, hey, wait a minute, we're going to do Watchmen, we're going to do this and that. Fine, now there's more good books. And we started to build a venue for these little publishers to sell their stuff because the newsstand, forget it. Over here, the newsstand's impossible.
It's not viable on the newsstand, is it?
It's terrible. You don't want to deal with them. But because there was a direct market, a firm sale market that was, like a shopping center, the anchors were Marvel and DC to bring in people. And then, then all of a sudden there's Cerebus, and all of a sudden there's Distant Soil, and all of a sudden there's ElfQuest. There's all, all these people started out, and some of them started to prosper and doing really well. Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
And so we built them a venue, and I used to help them. I used to try to help these guys. Anytime some artist who had a friend who was a little indie publisher wanted an exception to his contract so he could do something for him, like Gene Colan wanted to do something for Pacific Comics. Yeah, I give him an exception. Fine, go help.
Cool.
Anytime anybody needed help, we tried to help them. I had people say to me, Jim, why are you helping First Comics get started? And I said, look, on a level playing field, if we can't beat any of these guys, we don't deserve it. and we need to build this dying business. We need to make it grow, make it bigger, have different points of view, have some, segment the market,
Mm-hmm.
And so same thing with Pacific Comics. The Shanis brothers came into my office. They were already a distributor, and they said, we want to start publishing. I said, let me show you how. And that continued even after Marvel. When I was at Valiant, one of the 7 Image guys called me up. Can't remember which guy, but one of them called me up and he says, Jim, can you explain how to get lettering done? They were artists. They'd never had to do that,
That's brilliant.
So I told them a bunch of stuff and I answered some other questions. And then I put my production manager on the phone, Janet Jackson, JJ Jackson. And she walked them through who to call, how to get this done, how to get that done, what you need to do. So, we have, and then of course, once they get started, they're selling millions of copies. But, and then it was same thing with Milestone. DC funded Milestone, but they didn't help them at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I get a call from Dwayne McDuffie, who's a good friend. And he said, can you help us with some of this stuff? I said, sure. So I took my production manager, JJ Jackson, over to Milestone's offices. We spent the whole day, me with the big shots explaining distribution and stuff, and her with the production people explaining pre-press, printing production, in-house production. And that worked out well. And we were always there if they had a question or if they needed some help. That was when I was at Defiant. So we were trying to, guess what? The bigger the market got, the more of these little guys there were, the better we did.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? That's what a lot of people don't realize when they try and hold it all in, all the success to themselves, and they don't want to share. They're not helping themselves really, because we're all in the same industry, and the whole market has to do well. Rather than
and also they were almost like our farm club. Some of these guys would start off and they'd start getting good, and then they want to do Spider-Man. Okay, sure. Come on in.
Exactly. That's another aspect, definitely. We've had quite a few comments come in while we've been chatting. So I'm just going to catch
them good.
Well, let's have a look, shall we? Judge Len Harrington, good evening all. Good evening, Judge. Lawrence Allison, Big Jim, what a legend. Always have fond memories of his time and the classic lesson of keep the creatives fairly remunerated and you can be successful. As proven, the proof is in the
play fair, try hard.
Exactly. Evening, gents, from Ben. Michael Powell, who's just started writing for Marvel last year, I think. Hi, Jim. Your time as EIC was my time as an avid reader during Burns' FF, Miller's Daredevil, Epic, and Simonson's Thor. Thanks for the memories.
Boy, we had the greatest people on earth, man. What a
team.
If you can't win with that team, fire the coach.
But when you look at some of the, I remember getting on Burns' Fantastic Four run. See, people talk about mature comics and stuff like that. Some of the things he was doing in Fantastic Four, obviously some of the things Frank Miller was doing in Daredevil.
Oh, yeah.
This was ahead of its time. I mean, were there any conversations where you had to sell this idea to the publisher, or like you said, even at that stage, as long as the company was making money, he didn't really want to know, even after all the success you built over the first few years at Marvel?
There was no one to sell it to. I mean, I ran the comics. I reported to the president. He didn't want to know anything about it. I just, if I wanted to do something that was maybe really big, then I'd go talk to the guy. But no, I had a pretty free hand and didn't have to ask anybody. We just did it. I used to do what they called a new project memo. And the new project memo would describe what I wanted to do, and it would be circulated to like the company counsel and the legal department and the financial officer. And so none of those people could overrule me. If they didn't like it, too bad. The only guy who could overrule me was the president, and he never did. He just signed it. So we did anything we wanted basically, and pretty much got away with it. And, you want to have a separate discussion about all the things I screwed up. Well, we could do that too, but no,
another episode.
A lot of stuff really well, and I think that the key was to get the best editors in the world, the guys like Jim Salicrup and Bob Budiansky and Carl Potts, for God's sake. I mean, all these great guys.
Yeah.
And then they get the brilliant creative people, and and guess what? Magic happens.
And sorry, go on, Ollie.
Well, I mean, we've mentioned Epic Comics, and I've sort of very briefly mentioned Star Comics, and the great fame Peter Porker has, the Amazing Spider-Ham nowadays. But there's also the New Universe that a lot of creators, I must admit, have come back to from time to time. Star brand keeps on popping up in Marvel Comics. Now, was that an idea that was ahead of its time? Was the market just not ready for a new batch of characters? Because I know new characters are quite hard to get a foot in nowadays, as they were back in the 25th anniversary year.
Yeah, but see, it wasn't for Marvel. I mean, like after the first few years, Marvel and DC were each roughly 30% of the market when I took over in 1978. The direct market started to happen. We started to do well. Everybody started to do well. And so the market was growing exponentially. After a couple of years, Marvel was 70% of the market, 30 to 70. DC had fallen from 30 to 18. But in the bigger market, 18 was bigger than 30% used to be.
Right.
So they were doing great, but they were a little peeved about it. All right. So that said, what that meant is that when Marvel did a number one of anything, you could expect the direct market to buy 3, 4, 500,000 more likely copies, plus whatever you sell on the newsstand. So getting something launched was pretty easy. If you did it and it did it well, some of those 500,000 stick around, and if you blew it, you blew it. If it was something that we never should have done in the first place, like, let's see, US1, Starriers, some things were rammed down my throat,
Right.
The licensing people would tell Galton, toys are doing great, G.I. Joe and Transformers, got to do more of that, and so I'm doing US1,
right,
because Galton says so. Anyway, where I'm going with this is that the new universe started. It was 2 years before our 25th anniversary. And there was a meeting called by the public relations lady, and it was all the vice presidents. I was a vice president. And so we're going around the table trying to come up with ideas of what we can do about our 25th anniversary. And we're getting these genius ideas like, maybe we could have a coffee table book. All right. So anyway, finally they come to me, and my first thought was something I proposed to DC back when Jeanette Kahn took over, proposed essentially the same idea. I said, in January, we announced the end of the Marvel Universe. I said, it's over. I said, we tell everybody in the last issue of all these Marvel comic series is going to be in June. All right. And then we build to that and we count down to that. And then it ends in June. In July, we launch new number ones. And what we do is we keep everything that's good, all the same characters, keep everything that's good, and just don't put in all the stupid stuff. Because, I mean, if you read enough Marvel comics, you know that Iron Man was created in the Vietnam War era. Reed Richards fought with the French underground and in World War II. I mean, a lot of stuff just doesn't work anymore.
It was getting impossible, wasn't it?
Everybody gets that immortality sound.
Yeah.
Infinity formula all round.
And then there was stupid stuff like Bill Mantlo once had a rocket take off. There's a big cloud of smoke, and when the smoke clears, there's no rocket. It's gone. He said, well, what they did was they pulled the floor out from under the rocket, so the blast didn't have anything to push against. I said, science says you're wrong, man. How did you do it? Anyway, Jerry Conway had Hercules tie a chain to the bottom of Manhattan Island, tow it out to sea. Science says you're wrong. That doesn't work, Jerry. And then later he puts it back using the same chain, attaching it to the place, and now the battery is in the Bronx. Are you kidding me? It's a lot of stupid stuff. Get rid of that. Get rid of that stuff. And just keep the good stuff and start again and do it up to date, modern, and better.
The first real reboot.
So that was my first proposal. I was shouted down, man. The salespeople are losing their minds. Like, it's not broken. Don't fix it. We're outselling DC almost 5 to 1. What's wrong with you? All right. So I said, okay, it's to celebrate the birth of a universe. Let's build another one. And whoa, they like that. You know, I said, great. So I walked out of that room with $250,000 of development money.
Wow.
A little company. It's pretty good.
That's
and
good.
I had guaranteed royalties, a big marketing budget, everything I needed, you know, because how are you going to get Walt Simonson to leave Thor and do something new unless you can guarantee you won't lose any income? All right. So we were gone. About 2 weeks later, I'm called to the president's office, and he says, that budget you have, he says, how much have you spent? I said, I don't know, $10,000 or something. And he said, don't spend another penny. I said,
no.
What do you mean? Well, he and the other Cadence board of directors had taken the company private, and these 6 guys, they had 7, but they got rid of them. They had 6 guys who owned Cadence Industries, the parent company, and they had decided to sell Marvel, cash in. Because we're so successful. And of course, they've never opened a comic book. They think it's a fad, it's hula hoops, who knows? So anyway, I said, you don't want me to do it? And he said, oh, no, you just have to do it on staff. And so if you look at the credits for the New Universe books, you'll see my name and Archie's name a lot, and you'll see a lot of assistant editors, the only guys who were able and willing to stay after work and help me for free.
Wow.
Okay? So Archie was spectacular. What a genius. But so we basically were doing it on the cheap. We didn't have big money. We didn't have guaranteed royalties. We're basically getting artists who more or less, they were the only reason they worked for us is because they didn't have any other work that week. The reason Star Brand was as good as it was, and the reason it had world-class art, because John Romita Jr. came into my office and he said to me, do you have anybody to draw your book yet? I said, nope. He said, I want to draw it. I said, John, it's idiotic. I said, this is doomed to fail. I said, they took away all our support. I got nothing. I said, you're on good stuff now. Iron Man, X-Men. I don't know what he was on. I said, you have to give up something. That's crazy. You're making good money. Stay where you are. And he said, I want to draw your book.
Oh,
and I
bless
said,
him.
well, you're out of your mind. And he said, I'm going to draw your book. And I said,
not taking no
doing
for
it for me as a favor,
Yeah.
And that's a big favor. He's given up.
Yeah.
Who knows what
I think he was on Uncanny X-Men at that time.
I think he was. Yeah.
So then later that day, I get a call from Al Williamson, and Williamson says, "Hey, I hear JR's drawing your book. I want to ink it." I said,
Wow.
You're just crazy.
What a legend.
But crazy or not, on Starbrand, we had world-class art.
Yeah.
And I did the best I could, but those guys just knocked it out of the park, and they did a tremendous job. And some of the guys that we got for New Universe turned out to be stars, but they were new at the time. Will Sportaggio was a new guy,
Yeah. I remember Ron Lim was on there, wasn't he?
New guy. They didn't have all their feet under them yet, and so we did the best we could. That was also about the time I was out of there, and it had gotten ugly when they were trying to sell the company. It got really ugly, and I made them fire me, so I'd get my severance pay.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And
you've got to be careful, haven't you, in those situations, because you can end up with nothing if it all goes wrong. So you've got to.
Yeah. Well, I got I think 4 months of severance. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it must have been hard actually, because you'd built so much.
Yeah, and then they're destroying it, because when they started to sell the company, they're trying to put every penny they can on the bottom line, because companies like Marvel are sold for a multiple of the bottom line, their earnings.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so if you save a quarter, maybe you get 10 quarters back when you sell it, or 20 in Marvel's case, 30. So if you can save money or somehow put another nickel on the bottom line, it can affect what you get for the company.
Yeah.
And so these guys are doing things like they cashed out the pension plan. No more pension plan. They eviscerated our health insurance. They made it into a crummy HMO that cost nothing, but also nobody took it. They just ruined us. I mean, they and of course all this is getting blamed on me, because isn't that my department? Isn't that my department? And what am I supposed to do? Tell the guys upstairs is screwing you, in which case they all quit and go to DC. So I kept saying, I'm working on it. I'm fighting for it. Don't worry. I'm going to try to fix this, and I couldn't. And the only fight I won was they were going to retroactively cancel the royalty program. In other words, no more royalties as of today. But people had done 9 months of work expecting that they were getting royalties. Previous work.
Yeah.
And I got into a screaming argument with the president of the company, the executive vice president, the financial officer. We're like in a little group screaming at each other. And I told him, I'm going to quit. I'm going to leave this place. I'm going to a lawyer. We're going to have a class action suit. We're going to sue your butts, And they're shouting back at me, and all of a sudden the lawyer, whose office was also right there, the company counsel comes walking out of his office, and he says, "Gentlemen," to them, he says, "He's right." And he walks back into his office.
And that's the end of that.
So you can't take away something. You can't promise something, have people do work based on that promise, and then say, "Oh no, we were kidding."
Yeah, just pull the rug. You can't do that.
So I won that fight, but that's the only one. And other than that, it just got uglier and uglier. And I was glad to be out of there. Some adventures in between, but then I started Valiant.
Yeah, and I mean that I was going to ask about that. It's sort of like it must have been a period of time, sort of, want for a better expression, licking your wounds, as it were.
I wasn't wounded.
Yeah, good, glad to hear it. That sort of time in between, it must have been like, what did you think? What am I going to do next, or did you know straight away you just wanted to hit the ground running and do more comics?
Well, what I did was first I got a job writing an arena show, and that was nice, paid well. I started to do some freelance for Marvel, and then DeFalco and whoever decided they didn't want me, and that I was banned from Marvel. Oh, wow. I think it's because I think DeFalco thought if he's hanging around, they might bring him back.
Right.
He liked his job.
I guess you can see that.
I also had pissed off people like Jim Galton to the point they didn't really want anything to do with me, Yeah. And so, because I basically ratted them out to the new owners. The company was sold to New World Pictures, and I, before I left, I told the new owners where the bodies were buried. So, and that was unpopular. But anyway, so after that, I did a couple gigs, and then I realized that this New World Pictures, which changed its name to New World Entertainment, that had bought Marvel, it was one of these crummy, funky conglomerates and they were losing the whole conglomerate was losing $1 million a day. They were financed by junk bonds, paying tremendous interest. And I said, they're going to have to sell something. Yeah. They're running out of money. They're going to have to sell something. What do they got that's worth anything? Marvel. And so I put together a team, got a lawyer, marketing guy, got a good financial guy, some gray hair because I was young, need some gray hair. And I got Chase North America as a financial advisor and a debt partner willing to finance it, debt finance. And we made an offer and we're turned down. And they said it'll never be sold. 2 weeks later, they announced they're having an auction. So we were in the auction, and there were 9. They had an initial round to weed out the riffraff, and then they had the final auction, and there were 9 bidders. 8 of them dropped out. The reason that 8 of them dropped out is because they couldn't get management, and the reason I know that is because every one of them called me. and so we were the only bid. Marvel Acquisition Partners made the only bid, and so for 2 weeks we thought we won. We had to go sign papers. We had to, all this stuff, and we're making plans. All this is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
And then my financial guy, his name was Winston Folks. He calls me up one morning. It's like 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, something like that. And I don't know what, answer the phone. He says, "Have you read the journal?" And I said, "Winston, it's 5:45. No, I haven't read the journal." And he says, "Perlman bought Marvel." I said, "How can that be? How can that be?" He said, "They had an out clause in the papers we signed." He said, "And he is an insider at the selling company."
Oh, is that
what?
New World.
I always wondered how that happened.
He said he owns 20% of New World, and so he needed an arm's length bid, because if you're a 20% owner, you can't buy something from your own company unless somebody else makes a bid.
Yeah,
So we were just set up the whole time as a stalking horse. We were able. I think we probably could have. We bid $81 million, and Perlman bid 82.5. Now, usually when you get two bids, there's a process called ratcheting where you keep, well, these guys bid 85. Well, all right, we'll bid 86. We were prepared probably to go up to about 115. But they didn't even the selling company that Perlman was part owner of said, nope, no more bids. Perlman wins.
Bloody hell!
So they weren't even allowed to reply to the bid.
No.
And, so we got screwed. And
dodgy dealing.
Then eventually, because of that, I figured if I don't make a job for myself, I'll starve to death. So we were able to, that same group of guys, were able to put together money and start Valiant.
Yeah. And the rest is history.
Yeah, it wasn't $81 million, by the way, for Valiant.
No, I was gonna say.
Just a little over $1 million.
But... totally different ball game.
Oh, yeah, we had nothing to fight with but man hours. I'm telling you, I was working some long hours.
Wow.
Building it all from scratch. I mean, you had the characters, you had all those great characters, which is fantastic. But to actually build the brand but you did manage to get some amazing creators.
Yeah, mostly because no one else wanted them. But the thing is, with the way I got the characters was one of the suitors to buy Marvel was this guy named Richard Bernstein, and he didn't like the Marvel management at all. And he told me, he says, the only thing that's going well is the publishing. He said, I think I'm buying you and a bunch of used furniture. And he didn't mean me, he meant us. But anyway, after when Marvel closed and I needed a gig, I went to Richard and I said, you own some really good comic book characters. He owned Western Publishing. He said, I do? And I said, yeah. I said, they're really good. And so for one reason or another, they weren't equipped to publish those things. They published little golden books and stuff. But he said, but I'll license them to you. And I said, well, I don't have any money yet. And he said, I'll hold them. He held them for 2 years. He had big offers from Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, and others. Big offers. I used to get a call from his licensing guy every week. You sure you're going to do this? You sure you're going to do this? I said, yeah, I'm going to do it, And so eventually I did raise the money contingent on getting those licenses. And I saw Richard at the American Booksellers Association. And I said, Richard, I'm ready. And he said, his licensing guy's name was Pizers. He says, Pizers, come over here, make a deal with this guy. And so Jim Pizers walks over and he's like, deal about what? And he says, just do whatever he says. So I named my deal. It was a good deal. It was fair. And so we had those characters, which, like I say, it closed the license or the financing deal. And then we made up characters. I made most of them. It was me, or mostly me, but we made up, let's see, Harbinger, Exo, Shadow Man, Archer and Armstrong, Eternal Warrior. I don't know. Maybe
it's a lot.
I figured. But anyway, we got going pretty well. It took me essentially 9 months to take a 17% bite of the market. And in 9 months, and most of that came out of Marvel's hide, which is another reason you don't like me. So we were doing pretty well. And of course, then the greedy financial people and my partner who married one of them, they decide they want to do just like Marvel. I'm going to cash in. You're fat. You don't know. I'm building you $1 billion enterprise, and you want to get out for chump change.
It's terrible. That is such a shame because, and also there was another factor, wasn't there? There was the speculator market, which inflated some of the figures.
But
that distorted things a little bit.
That wasn't a factor with Valiant until like the very when I started the superheroes, that was like March '91, and it was somewhere around May. Well, actually, the first big hit I think was March. So it's. We were just starting to catch on. So it wasn't like we were buoyed by the speculator market. They were just discovering us right now.
Yeah.
So we were starting to do really well. We were publishing 8 titles, and we were making pre-tax profit annualized of $25 million a year.
That's amazing.
Marvel was publishing 156 titles, and their pre-tax profit was $2.5 million.
You're doing something right.
Giant, big fat overhead, all these expensive stuff, big fancy offices, all that stuff, and then a lot of their books are below break even. Some were around break even, and then they had a few X-Men titles. I mean,
but all of yours
they weren't doing all that well, and we were killing them. But anyway, P.S. My evil partner and his wife, the financier, venture capitalist who funded us. They shopped it behind my back, and they got a bona fide $250 million offer from Paramount, $250 million. And I know this for a fact, and I'll tell you why. But the terms of the deal is they got really greedy. They wanted everything, and I get nothing, And I'm like, what? They wanted me to sign a 10-year employment agreement that didn't specify a title, any duties, or compensation. No, they didn't mention compensation in this giant thick contract. Yeah. And also sign reps and warranties so that if anything went wrong, the SEC would throw me in jail. Total lies,
It's terrible, isn't it? People get greedy in these situations.
Yeah, really.
Everybody can do well.
They got greedy and they got screwed because what happened was, I wouldn't go along with that. They got Bob Layton and Barry Windsor-Smith and John Hartz, and they figured, well, we can do it without him. And so Barry will be the big name, Bob will run the bullpen, and John Hartz will do the marketing. So, but as soon as they fired me because I wouldn't go along with the deal. As soon as they fired me, Paramount pulled out. Said, creative guy's gone. See ya. And so it was a little Pyrrhic victory for me there. But back to why we had these guys. Okay, we start out with basically kids from the Kubert School because we couldn't afford to compete with Marvel or DC for artists.
Yeah.
So we had Cubies. Then Don Perlin, who was on staff at Marvel, we used to go to lunch secretly because if they knew he was going to lunch with me, they'd fire him. Seriously. And I was that much of a pariah. Yeah. And so Don kept saying, you got to get me out of here. He said, I hate this place. It's become a snake pit. It's horrible. I got to get out of here. You got to, I want to come work with you. I said, Don, what are you, 60-some? You want to leave a place where you got retirement, benefits, all this stuff, and come and work for a fragile startup that may not make it.
That's a big thing to say, isn't it?
So he said, I don't care. I want to be with you. I said, okay. So Don came and worked for us, and that was a godsend. And then Bob Layton, a couple months later, I think he had done some personal behaviors that DC found reprehensible, and they had banned him for life years before. Yeah. So the door was always closed at DC for him.
Right.
Marvel, he came to the end of his contract, and I don't know who he pissed off there, but Marvel, he came to the end of his contract, and they refused to renew it, and they said, and we have no work for you. Go away.
Oh, really?
So he had no place else to go. So he came to us, and I needed an artist. I needed artists. And I said, great, you can be an inker, And so he was going to ink. I had him. I said, you have to be on staff, but you can be an inker for us and do a lot of inking. And but just staff job. So then Barry Windsor-Smith did the same thing. He burned his bridges both at Marvel and DC. Well, both Bob and I knew him pretty well because he'd worked for me at Marvel, and I don't know, I guess Bob lived in his neighborhood or something. So we called him up. He came down to the city, talked to us, and I agreed that he would work for us. He was pretty demanding guy, but we worked something out. And so I had those two guys, and then I had the miracle from God, David Lapham. Studying samples all the time, and we kept trying to teach him and work with him. We were the only ones who ever. He sent the samples to everybody, but we were the only ones who ever responded. Me and Don Perlin, and we tell him work on this, work on that. Well, finally, it made him jump through so many hoops. I figured I got to hire this guy. I can't not hire him.
You feel obligated.
So I made him come into the office. I said, "You're not that good yet, so you have to come to the office and work." It was a 2.5-hour commute each way from where he lived to the office.
That's dedication, isn't it? If you're going to do that.
So he showed me something, and And then before you know it, I said, we have to look over your shoulder at first. After a while, you didn't have to look over this kid's shoulder. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
But he still kept coming in because he liked it. So, he was a miracle. And then finally, we still needed guys, and we started getting guys nobody else wanted. Stan Drake. You mean nobody wants Stan Drake? What?
Wow.
He was old. He was out of fashion. He happened to be the guy that inspired Neil Adams. But
still a great storyteller.
John Dixon was great. We got Ernie Colon. We got who else? Oh yeah, Ralph Reese to come work for us. We got Steve Ditko.
Yeah.
We just we started putting together a crew.
It was great. It was exciting.
It was like we had the Over the Hill gang, and then we had these new kids.
Yeah. What a great combination, though. That sort of energy of the new guys, but the experience of these old veterans.
The new kids were mostly QBs. And I'll tell you what, Joe Kubert, some of those guys didn't know which end of the brush to hold. But Joe Kubert taught them one thing, and that's to be professional. I asked them to do something. They said, yes, sir. And they did what I asked them. But and so when the old guys are showing up, they're talking to the old guys. The old guys are teaching them. And they're listening because Kubert taught them that. And Joe was a great guy. Anyway, so one way or another, we did it, and we started winning. We started really winning, and I'm thinking this time we got it. This time I could have done this with Marvel, but I'll do it with my own stuff. This time we're going to win. We're going to, and then the evil people wanted to sell it, and they ended up getting rid of me. And then P.S. The Paramount deal fell through, so they sold it for $65 million of Acclaim stock, which plunged. So they didn't really get that much money out of it. And also the stock vested over 5 years. Acclaim went bankrupt in 2 years, so they only got 2 payments. They made plenty of money because they dividended themselves all this cash.
I'm sure they did. Yeah.
But they really screwed themselves. And
just that short-sightedness, isn't it, Jim? It's very short-sighted. That sort of
it really is. I mean, greed has kept ruining the comic book business. Not only just me, but again and again, lots of companies they just do the wrong thing. They try to cash in. That whole collector speculator boom. Was the most short-sighted, stupid thing.
Yeah,
but people they're making money, so they think, and it'll go on forever. No, it won't. It's a bubble.
It's not sustainable. Something like that, is it? It can't go on forever.
It's strip mining, and Marvel. When I was there, we were X-Men was selling something near $1 million, $750,000, whatever it was, and most of that was single copies. People weren't buying cases of this stuff. And maybe they buy 2, one to put away and one to have.
Yeah,
and their X-Men habit cost them like 65 cents a month. Okay. But then when the marketing people, the Perlman brought in as marketing people, and they just strip mined it. They all of a sudden there's variant covers on everything, and there's every issue somebody dies, somebody gets married, somebody's in a costume. It became all about events. There's the foil stamped, die cut covers, and
we suffered through it.
Trading card business. It got ugly, and I'm thinking this isn't going to last. And it didn't. And it was
I think the fans knew it as well. I mean, I remember being in my early 20s, in the 90s when all that was happening, and being a real fan. I bought everything, and then but I bought less and less and less because, like you say, it became all about events, and because they were pushing out all these variants and all these different titles, the talent was getting stretched thin. And a lot of the books just weren't as good. It's as simple as that, And as a fan at the time, it was hard to be a fan, to see it fall apart like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, like I said, the people when I worked there at Marvel, the people upstairs had never opened a comic book. They didn't know anything about it. And I think to some extent, what the Perlman people knew about it was that you could strip mine.
Yeah.
There's this massive audience, and we can squeeze them and make them pay more and more money. And that's, that's a bad business strategy in my mind. And I think that the creative people, I think they knew better to some extent, but they're also, while the marketing tricks were working, they're getting the big royalty checks, so they're like, well, okay,
we'll make hay while the sun's shining.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that's going to end, and it did. And the industry really has not recovered since then.
No, I don't know.
A lot of readers who I sport, they just walked away and never came back.
Yeah. So it's really kind of sad because I mean, we were on the verge of really becoming the mass medium we were meant to be. Comics is a tremendous medium. People think, oh, well, movies are better. No, they're not. No, comics are a 1 cent medium. You have entire focus on the comic book. Comics is the only visual medium you take at your own pace. Okay, and it's all right there if you want to review it. Comics, you were able to deliver your message with iconic power because you look at a Frank Miller image that he draws. Yeah, he's telling you exactly what he needs you to know, and he's telling you in a powerful, iconic way. And if you do it right, you can pick those images that tell the story, that where you can bridge the in-betweens as a reader, and you feel like you've seen a movie, except it's better because you don't get this shot. I always used to demonstrate this standing up, but in a movie, inevitably, Superman's going to sit down. He's going to have that butt sticking out pose. No, and in the comics, you see Superman stand, and he's noble and erect. You see him sit, and he's noble and erect. I mean, you always get that. You get whatever they want to tell you. Noble and erect, or battered and defeated, or whatever. I mean, you have
whatever the story,
absolute control of the message, and it's a powerful, powerful tool.
And I love the way that it is direct. It's so direct. I mean, yes, you have a team creating a comic, but it's a much smaller team than a movie. So you've basically got a vision from maybe a single creator or a couple of creators, from them to you. It's very direct, and I like that.
And it's monthly, not every 3 years waiting for a sequel.
And it's undiluted. That's what I love.
Yeah, and also the thing is that I think the one thing that people overlook sometimes is that if you have an excellent editor like Louise or like Larry Hama or, for God's sake, Archie Goodman, I mean, they become like the producer and director of the film. They are the ones who bring all those parts together and make it work and make it beautiful. And that role is really critical. Now, there's not a lot of that going on anymore. I mean, editors are usually just expediters these days. Brian, what's his face, Bendis guy, if he wants to do something, they just process it through.
There seems to be that the writers have a lot more power, don't they? The successful writers.
Yeah, it's gone to the star system, and that's not a good system. And we had some excellent people. The other thing is that Archie and Larry and all those great people, they taught. They were knowledgeable people, and they passed on the wisdom of the ancients. You don't get much of that anymore, and it's sad, So, but some guys are winging it, and they're doing pretty well. And there's a lot of talented people there. I think sometimes somebody should tell them how to tell a story, but. And also, I mean, what's the secret? Gimmicks? No. Good story, well told.
Yes.
It's been that way for 40,000 years.
And that'll never change. That will always be the secret to great comics, I think. Yeah. We are getting towards the end, Jim. We've been over our hour, and wow, it's been fantastic. I've enjoyed it.
It really has been, like we said at the beginning, wind you up and let you go. It's been fantastic. I've got one thing I'd like to ask you, and this is more from a personal point of view, Jim. I really loved your run on Legion of Superheroes with Francis Manapul just before they did the New 52. What was that like to go back to the Legion of Superheroes, only to then find, like everyone else working for DC, actually we're rebooting the universe?
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I didn't want to do. So when I started on it, they said, "Well, what do you want to do, Jim? You want to start from number one? You want to put it back the way you had it? You want to?" I said, "No, I'm going to pick up where Mark Waid left off." Don't you want to start from number one? No, I don't. I want to continue. And I said, I don't like some of the stuff he did, but I'm going to segue into what I want, and so I was trying to do what Walt did. When Walt took over Thor, he didn't reboot it. He just made it good. So I was trying to do that. And I was working with Francis Manapul. Francis Manapul is a brilliant young man.
Yes.
He is a very talented, brilliant young creator. He's still young. Okay.
He really is.
And so when I was working with him, I kept kind of encountering his youngness. Because no, seriously, I mean, like I'd write full scripts and I would describe everything. And Francis sometimes would have the guy who talked first at the lower right-hand corner of the panel.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't malicious. It wasn't evil. It was just,
no,
he didn't know that yet.
inexperienced.
Yeah. And so, but he put more work into that stuff. Oh my God. He put a lot of work. Now, the second trouble with Francis is that I think in my first 8 issues, I had 4 fill-in artists. You know, I just couldn't, he couldn't keep up. And
but that's another part of being young sometimes, isn't it? Because it's pace. You know, some young artists, they just can't get used to that pace. But once they get into their groove, they can churn it out. You know, they can do it.
Yeah, and I think that comes with age and experience. And also, to me, when I was at Marvel, I had somebody say to me, "Oh, you have to be either." He said, "Oh, you always say you have to be either very good, very fast, or very nice. Any 2 of those 3." I said, "I never said anything like that in my life. That must be the Falco you're talking about. That sounds like something he would say." No, what I said was, let's find out how much you can do, and let's make sure that that's what you have to do. So if you can do 1 a year, fine, you do an annual. You know, if you can do 3 a month, like Claremont, fine, and 3 a month. You know, and if you're doing layouts like John Buscema, you can do 5 or 6 a month. Yeah, great, you're John Buscema, do it.
So you play to the strengths, basically.
Yeah, and basically don't try to, I don't care about speed. I care about how much you can do and how can we match that. With Walt on Thor, for instance, see, Walt's a pro, total pro, knows what he's doing,
Yeah.
And so after a few issues, and he's doing a lot of work there. After a few issues, after a dozen issues or so, he said to me, he said, "I'm losing ground, and in a couple of months, I'm going to need a break." And so he gave us months to find good people to do those issues, to bridge the gap between where Walt left. And he also helped to keep it, reasonably in continuity. And so, so that's how to do it. And, and of course, I didn't have to explain that to Larry Hama, explain anything to Larry Hama. He snarls at you. In the nicest way. You don't have to explain stuff like that to Louise or Carl or anybody, Bob Boriansky. I mean, I had the good guys and they knew what to do and they did it. I got those books on time in 1978 and we stayed on time for 10 years. We never missed shipping. No one's.
And that's another key thing, isn't it, Jim? I know I've heard you say this in interviews and I totally agree, is that a huge important part of making books successful is getting them out regularly on time.
Yes, absolutely. If people show up to buy that book and it's not there, I mean, you have a contract with those people.
That was another early success at Marvel for you, wasn't it, Jim? Getting books out on time eventually.
Yeah, I got them. I mean, it took me
a couple of years.
When I took over in 1978, January 1978, we were supposed to publish 45 color comics. We published 26. Does that tell you how bad it was? Okay, it took me till April till we caught up and had published the correct number of books.
Yeah.
By the end of that year, I got a letter from the guy who ran World Color Press, Bob Craig, and it's like, "Congratulations, for the first time in its history since 1939, Marvel Comics."
No.
And you know what? It doesn't. There's 2 ways to do that. You can rush it out and do it fast and sloppy to catch up, or you can stay up all night, or you can do what Walt did and plan in some help.
And
that's how to do it. And we always tried to do it the right way. I mean, like I said, if you want to have a whole show about all my mistakes and stupidities, we can do that too. But that one we got right. That one we nailed.
I'm going to bring in a few more comments because we're near the end, and I want to give guys a chance just to have their say. So we've got Sam Morgan, who works with us on the show. He's away today. Really gutted I wasn't there to talk to the guy who wrote Starbrand. He's a Starbrand fan. So it's
that was fun.
It was a good book. I love.
When you have great art, it's so much easier.
Yeah,
so much easier, and they make you look good.
And Starbrand, I really loved the whole. Well, I love the concept of New Universe. Actually, the idea that it was just that little bit more real. In
That's
the way
what Stan set out to do in the first place. He didn't want the Fantastic Four to have costumes. He was going to do it scientific. He was going to have cosmic rays, and
Yeah, it was
guess
just
what?
taking
Stan, science was not his best thing. And if you're working with Jack Kirby, pretty soon there's going to be a blue area on the moon. There's going to be repulsor rays. I mean, so it became fantasy, heroic fantasy. But I thought, well, why not? Why can't we do it with more science? And that can be fun. We'll do it.
I love the way that it was an extension of that original idea, and Starbrand for me really worked in that way. The dialogue, the way that people behave, the relationships, his relationship with his girlfriend, that was good stuff, And
I like I said, you get the good artists help you. Whether I mean, even if they just draw it right, it's like wow, he drew the expression I wanted. But it also, if their art is beautiful, everybody thinks you can write.
Thanks, guys.
I don't know.
I've got a question here from Lawrence. What is Jim's view of self-publishing stroke Kickstarters in the current marketplace? Any tips on how to stand out? Ooh.
Okay, I love it. I mean, I think that's where the future of the industry is right now. I think that not that much going on at Marvel or DC. You look at what they're doing. Almost everything is derivative.
Everything's Batman at DC.
Yeah, and it's all derivative. It's all stuff you've seen before. When I ran into Terry's store and he told me they were doing Marvel 2099, I said, well, I could tell you everything about it right now, and it's going to fail because it's just another iteration. It's another derivation. I said it's Marvel. It'll take off and sell well the first couple issues, and it'll be dead in the air. And he's no, we've got Stan working on it. I said, yeah, Stan. I'm sorry. At that point, I don't know how old he was, but I said, I don't think he's going to turn on the afterburners and save you. So anyway, I love this new stuff. I think also Image is doing some great stuff. You see that Saga book? Holy cow.
Brilliant.
And so the way to stand out in that market, and I do this all the time, I go to these conventions, and a lot of these small publishers, independent publishers, self-publishers, they'll come over and see me, and talk about the business and their experience and ask questions sometimes and stuff. And I always try to, I'm not telling them anything I invented. I'm passing on the wisdom of the ancients. Yeah. I said, I have a couple things I could send you, a thing about storytelling, a thing about story, and some other, useful items, if you want to see them. And the way to stand out in that market is to know your craft. Learn your craft. If your stuff looks very professional, if it's easy to read, so many people are doing stuff. It's almost like you stay up all night and think of a way to make this hard to read. No, make it effortless, clear to glance, and have something to say. Don't just, it's like if it's, I don't know, if it's just about the battle in the city, then that gets tiresome after a while. But if you care about the characters, if you care about as people, like I did when I was a kid, I just couldn't wait to find out what happened to Spider-Man next month.
Yeah.
I wanted to know. And it's relationship marketing. You're building a relationship. Tell it clearly. Make it easy. Clear at a glance. Everybody's into this black backgrounds now and black gutters. It's so hard to read sometimes because all the black in the panel blends into the background. And then you're like, it's like a Rorschach test.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying you can't do that. There's nothing you cannot do. You can do anything, but you better be awful damn good.
Yeah, and have a reason for doing it. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it. Do it because you're trying to say something. Yeah.
Yes. Do it for a reason. Know what you're doing. Yeah. Do it for a reason. And the reason should be it helps me tell my story.
Yes.
Because you're a storyteller. Storyteller first. If you think you're just going to get by on flashy art, well, you might for a while, but not for long.
Oh, I love hearing this, Jim. You're just totally validating my own opinion on the subject.
Well, you probably talked to some of the same people I did. I mean, I learned my craft from experts.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite conversations of all time was a half-an-hour conversation I had with Carl Potts. Actually,
there you go, Carl. Terrific. When he started out, he didn't know everything, but he learned very quickly, and all of a sudden, he's teaching people, and he still is to this day.
Oh, he's a fantastic guy.
Oh, great guy.
One more comment. What we got here? Jim is fantastic. Really enjoying this chat, guys.
You're not the only one, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. From Will Sliney, who is an artist.
Oh yeah, hi Will.
Hi Will, how you doing? Has worked at Marvel.
Artist and TV star.
Yeah, got his own TV show now, teaching children about drawing. So that's fantastic. And he's saying, I've heard that quote so many times. I think he was talking about the qualities of a professional, you know, the be nice, be quick, and all that. We've all heard it, but no one really knows where it came from.
Well, I didn't say it. That's for damn sure.
Well, that's one down. And yeah, that's all the comments we've caught up. I'm pretty sure of that.
Treat people with respect, because you'll always meet them on the way up and then on the way down again.
This is
true.
true.
And also you respect your audience. I mean, those guys are paying.
Yeah,
you know, you should. You're an entertainer first. You know, make entertainment. And too many of these guys these days, and some of this goes for some of the indie guys too. Too many guys, they're doing stuff to entertain themselves. And I can name a few people in my era who did that too. You know, think about what you're doing here. This isn't masturbatory. It's you're an entertainer.
Yeah,
out there and entertain.
And I think they forget. I mean, because there is an element. Obviously, comics are art, but at the end of the day, it's not self-indulgent. It shouldn't be self-indulgent art.
Bingo. Too many guys self-indulgent. No.
Yeah.
Think about what you're doing. You're trying to entertain people. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And on that very wise note, I think we'll call it a night, Jim, because you've given us.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. This is fun.
Thank you.
It's been a joy. Thank you so much, Jim.
You guys have too much fun, I think, sometimes. I don't know. There's a lot of laughing going on before I got on the air and then since. So
we're a very happy show, Jim. We like to be happy and we like to put the joy. There's too many miserable people trying to bring comics down. So we like to add a little bit of fandom, a little bit of joy, and a little bit of our own geek.
We're all fans, aren't we?
Yeah,
exactly.
You don't get into business because you graduated from college and thinking like, what should I do? Because you wanted to do it all your life.
Yeah.
That's it. And you've got to have that. You've got to have that passion, I think, to succeed. Yeah, if you haven't got it, then it's not going to happen. So have a great evening. I know it's only just coming into the evening for you, Jim. I hope you have a great evening. And we hope to one day see you over here in the UK again. It would be great to see you.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get Wide Awake Club up again and running so you can turn up on that.
No, we won't do that. We're just proving him right now, Ollie, with all his ridiculous comments. Have a great night, Jim, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas.
And you.
And you too.